Let's talk about Calvin, the coolest president. Let's talk about that. Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. Well, hey there, folks. Brian Nichols here on the Brian Nichols Show, and thank you for joining us on, of course, another fun-filled episode. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you live from our BNC studios here in lovely Eastern Indiana. Don't let outdated visits, prospecting tips put your company at risk. We are heading into a recession, and you need to be prepared. Learn more by emailing me at brian@briannicholsconsulting.com. Well, was Calvin Coolidge, in fact, the coolest president? Well, if you're libertarian leaning, you're probably going to say absolutely. But if you're Stephanie and Austin Petersen, not only will you agree, but also you'll write a book about it. Joining us today, Austin Petersen and Stephanie Petersen. Welcome to the show.
I love your energy.
Yeah, Brian,
nice to see you, man. It makes me feel so excited.
We're ready to rock.
Hey, guys, good to have you back, and thank you. Yeah, we got to bring some energy because we're talking about Calvin, the coolest of all presidents, a brand new kids book. There it is that you guys just wrote. I know, it's so great. But before we get there, do us a favor, guys. It's been a little bit since we both had you on the show. Reintroduce yourselves to the Brian Nichols Show audience, and what the heck's been going on here since you guys were last in the show? Stephanie, Austin, I think you guys were separate at the time, but now together at last.
That's right. I think when I last talked to you, oh my gosh, it was several years ago when I was a YouTuber myself.
Yep.
So my channel was up and coming. And I think it was after I volunteered for Austin's campaign for US Senate. And so I was, just trying to build my name. But then COVID hit.
Yep.
And that's when Austin and we got closer and we got together in a relationship. And I was like, hey, I'm on lockdown here in Michigan. I should move to Missouri to be with you.
I'm going to lock you down, baby girl. But it's all voluntary.
Yeah. And I literally, I packed up my car. I quit my job. I'm a social worker. So I worked at a hospital for 10 years and I became a telehealth social worker. And I moved to Missouri and we fell in love and we got married and we have 2 dogs.
Yeah. And we wrote our first kids books. We just, it's a marriage made in liberty, right? We both love limited government and freedom and the Constitution and our country. And we both have the same values and goals and dreams. And we want to accomplish the same things. And, we're both very entrepreneurial. And, for us, we really do have a dream marriage, I would say. And it's only been, we're only in our second year for sure. But I mean, the thing is that like Stephanie and we have something that, I never had in any relationship before her. And I really think that people are, struggling to get together these days. It's so hard to find like your one. And so many people are complaining. But I mean, you want to hear, I'll tell you a little secret. I don't think I've ever said this publicly.
Oh, what's the secret?
I've told you this, but I've never told anyone else this. One time I actually had a conversation with John Stossel.
Oh, yes.
And he told me privately, he's like, Austin, whatever you do not marry a woman who is not a libertarian. He's like, you marry a girl who agrees with your values because your life will be much easier.
Oh, yeah.
And I took John Stossel's advice and I married a smoking hot, redheaded libertarian girl, Stephanie Petersen. And
thank you.
We've had a wonderful time the last couple of years. And,
yeah,
my career has had ups and downs and sides to sides. And it's nice to know that Stephanie, loves me and supports me, even when things aren't necessarily going the greatest, which, when you do what we do and we're kind of in this entrepreneurial sort of podcasting media world, sometimes you're on top of the world and the other times nobody's paying attention to you and everybody ignores you. It doesn't matter. You're running for president of the United States. Like, who cares? Right. There's a lot of competition and there's a lot of heartache too. So, having a fulfilling relationship with someone who shares your values and supports you no matter what it's a difference between life and death. It feels like.
I love seeing you two together. I love seeing you two happy. I mean, Austin, you and I go way back with the TLR days back in 2015. I mean, like to see, all that's transpired over the past, my gosh, almost 10 years now. It's really cool, right?
Before I knew you.
Yeah.
Because I first found you for the Libertarian debates.
When
you were running for president.
Yeah. And I mean, I've always thought that, the ideas of liberty needed a sort of a capitalistic approach to sell capitalism. There are a lot of great nonprofits that do a lot of good work, but I think the idea of using free market ideas to sell free market ideas is one that has merit. So, from the Libertarian Republic in 2015 to apforlibertyshop.com and Calvin the Coolest President books today, I think I've made a good career, probably one of the best, known libertarians out there that is, that makes a living selling the ideas that I deeply am very passionate about. Some people sometimes, you'll always get accused of being a grifter, but people who know me and have known me for a long time, people like yourself, know that I deeply care about these ideas, that it's more than it's more than just a bumper sticker slogan for me, right?
Yeah, well, and this is the important thing too. People seem to forget in our movement is that when we're creating value itself costs something, right? Whether it's the time that we're investing into bringing the value to the table or the resources we're bringing to the table. So, I mean, it's not that we're grifting, it's that we're trying to bring value and in return be able to compensate ourselves for the value that we're trying to bring this movement. And that's a great segue, because what you guys have done is you have taken this entrepreneurial spirit that we not only promote here in the greater liberty movement, but now you guys are actually turning it into a business, but also, again, bringing value to the table. Now, we just had Connor Boyack here on the show recently from the Libertas Institute. They do the amazing Tuttle Twins series. So obviously, talking about bringing the books to kids is so important, because education is vital when we're trying to not just like raise the next generation, but also make sure that the values, the morals, the principles that we know help build this country are maintained. So you guys wrote a brand new AI-inspired book called Calvin, the Coolest President. Jump ball. Give us a little bit of context behind this book and what's been the reception thus far.
You go ahead and start, Steph. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we wanted to write a book. I mean, Austin is really good at writing, but I know that you're a little bit apprehensive to write a book yourself. And so AI helps to give you that framework for your book. So you don't get stuck in writer's block. And so basically we used ChatGPT. And so you literally just type in a prompt and you say, write me a children's book for ages 2 to 6 about the life of Calvin Coolidge and make it factual. And it literally does that for you. However, it's not entirely factual all the time.
Makes mistakes.
That's the problem. For example, it told us that Calvin Coolidge had an ice cream machine in the White House and he could push a button at any given moment and get ice cream. And we tried to fact check that. We even contacted this lady.
You probably know Amity Schlaze.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we contacted her and asked her, did he like ice cream? Did he have an ice cream machine? She's like, he didn't have an ice cream machine, but he liked milky foods.
Right. So we can only confirm he liked milky foods. But I did find a picture of him online in the White House garden having a party with a bunch of people and they're all eating ice cream. So we're like, hey, he had ice cream parties at the White House.
So we wrote it ourselves, but the real miracle of artificial intelligence wasn't the writing of the book, because we had to kind of scrap that. The real miracle of AI were the illustrations.
Talk to me about that. Yeah,
that we could not have done, right? So Calvin Coolidge brought to life in a way that no one has ever seen him before. This is how people like to get their stories. This is how people like to get their histories. Do people know there's only one president who was born on the 4th of July? And that was Calvin Coolidge.
Yeah.
Right. And so
that is a fact.
Here he is.
And ChatGPT knows that.
Right. So we told Midjourney, which is the picture drawing tool, to give us a picture of Calvin Coolidge. He was a redhead, so we had to tell him, make sure he's a redhead. And it says, we said, playing with fireworks as a little boy. So it gave us several iterations of that. And then we chose this and used that as the picture that we wanted to have for him on the 4th of July. There's, he had a menagerie in the White House of animals. So we told it to, give us a picture of Calvin Coolidge as a redhead surrounded by lots of cute little animals. And
the fun thing about Midjourney that helped us to make our illustrations is that sometimes it has imperfections. It doesn't exactly know how many fingers a person has or how many eyes we have on our face. So there's some people that may have 3 eyes in our book.
But it's getting better. It's getting better all the time. Here's what it created when I said, make a picture of me and my wife, Stephanie. Because, I've been out there in the public sphere long enough that it knows him. Midjourney knows who I am.
Yeah.
So if you type in, make a picture of Austin Petersen, it's going to go out there and be able to make a fairly decent representation, right? It's not the best, but it's close enough for government work, right? Here we are. And then Steffi over there looking cute like in a Disney movie with our little dogs, right? So that is the real revolution, not necessarily the writing of the book, which just kind of like got me out of our writer's block, and we started writing. But what really was the revolution was the art, because in order for us to do something like that, it would have been way too cost prohibitive. And we would have shared royalties, and we probably would have made. It's not like we're getting to be millionaires off of this book, but the money that we have made off of it, probably 2/3 of it would have gone to the publisher, and then to the children's book author, and then we would have been left with pennies on the dollar.
And if we had an illustrator that we had to pay,
and it would have been risk, too much risk, right? You would speculate all that. You would have put out a lot of money for no guaranteed return. We put out instead, it took us maybe 12 to 20 hours to produce this book from idea to publication. And
it was one weekend, basically. And it was a really fun bonding exercise. I mean, we just sat here together and we were typing in different prompts on Midjourney, and we were looking at the pictures together, and it was just really cool. It was fun because, again, we're creative individuals. So that's how we enjoy ourselves.
And you can find it on Amazon.com and like the Kindle, and then you can get a paperback version of it. We're gonna start selling a signed copy version on our website for people who are just super fans, of which there are 5. But once we finish this up, and we kind of feel like this has died down a little bit, we're going to move on. We're going to write 4 more books, hopefully by the end of the year, so we can have the 5 most libertarian presidents, of which there are really actually only 5. And even Silent Cal had his issues, but this is a great way to introduce these ideas to kids, because there are a million kids' books of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, and everybody says the great presidents are the ones who fought the war. Or, this is a president who didn't do much, but in not doing much, he did everything, and contributed to one of the greatest periods of American history, an era of good feelings, which is what they called it, which was the Roaring '20s. And having a president who wasn't an imperialist led to, and was more laissez-faire, led to the flourishing of the American economy.
It's so great to be able to not only have the resources now to tell these stories, but actually it reminds me, there's a YouTube channel I follow called Corridor Crew. And I talked about this last week, actually, on the show, where they just did a brand new, entirely CGI/AI generated anime. And it's like a legitimate 10-minute or so long video. And what they did was they were able to use green screens, live action recordings of themselves, and then layer in the AI technology that's available and create a full, actual, animated series, basically, that they could turn into something beyond what it would have taken otherwise. If it was, to your point, illustrators, entire teams, directors, producers, they could take that and democratize this entire process and really open it up to your average person. And I think right there, that is speaking exactly to why the libertarian entrepreneur mindset is so important, because we see the barriers, right? We see the traditional roadblocks that are in our way to try and bring these things to the table, to bring it to the market. Whereas as we have the advancement of technology, for all the negative things we hear about there from technology, there's also a lot of positive, because it opens the door to possibilities that weren't even in the purview before it even became a thing. So I would love for you guys to kind of talk about, as a libertarian entrepreneur, using technology to help advance not just our ability to speak to our audience, but also to help you guys along the way with your path of trying to earn a living.
Well, if you think about it, ask yourself, if you went out there to try and raise money for somebody to invest and say, hey, listen, you could split the profits, but we invest in a children's book about Calvin Coolidge, people be like, who the hell was Calvin Coolidge, right? A lot of people don't even know he existed, right? So, when you say it democratizes our ability to tell these stories, it absolutely does. And I'm working on other projects as well that would help us to tell the stories of libertarians from history, because, I mean, where's the documentary about Frederick Bastiat, right? Where's the movie about Murray Rothbard? Where's the stories of Ludwig von Mises escaping from the Nazis of Austria, right, in the beginning of World War II, right? These stories haven't been told, and it's because we're such a small group of people, and investment into this would be very risky. So it's really gotten rid of a lot of the risk for us to be able to tell some of these stories. And because I find so many of these stories from history fascinating, and they've never been told before in pictures and in sounds and in music, now we can actually, if you are a creative person, but say you can't draw, right, now you can, right? So you can actually bring technology to bear to help you to tell stories that have never been told before. And what I really hope is, and this is quite a romantic belief, I guess, but I really hope that this helps to revitalize and restore the liberty movement.
Yes.
Because I hope it brings more people over to our ideas of freedom and convinces them of why it's possible to be a boss without being bossy.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, we both have been entrepreneurs even before I met you. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I was a YouTuber. I also had a jewelry store on Etsy back in the day. So we both liked entrepreneurship in general. And you used to have shops. I remember I used to buy your shirts.
Yeah, I had
from
very
your
limited
different shops. So
very
you were quite an
limited.
entrepreneur too.
I was, but I
Yeah.
never really profited from those. Those were
Yeah.
always usually I was using them to fund like Liberty projects or my campaigns. So if I had shops before, just now is the first time I've ever had like a merchandise store, a libertarian merchandise store that is actually like a for-profit venture, not to
Right.
fund necessarily anything else. So our new AP for Liberty shop, Stephanie makes a lot of the designs on the store.
Yeah, I mean, I was the main graphic designer for your campaign for US
Yeah.
Senate. So I got a lot of practice doing that. But technology has advanced so much that it's easier and easier now to design graphics for things. That's the thing. If you have the idea, we use Adobe Express, for example, or there's like Canva that you can use.
Shh.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Don't tell
I
her.
made this on Canva. No, I hear you.
Yeah.
But it literally allows you to become an artist.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you don't want to learn Photoshop, because
Right.
that's really hard stuff.
Yeah. And so, like, again, back to the romantic ideals, I like the idea that, somebody might buy my 50 caliber bullet bottle opener and hand it to their buddy, and their buddy's like, "Oh my God, is this real?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's a 50 caliber bullet." And it starts a conversation, and they start talking about gun rights and freedom and all that stuff. And I know it seems silly because I think people on a surface level will say that's not going to change the world or anything like that. But like the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, right? So if having somebody wearing a T-shirt that says "Ooh, government" on it gets people to talk, or I have a shirt now that people actually bought. It's a tank top that says "FDR sucked," and prolonged the Great Depression. And I mean, that was not even the most controversial thing I posted recently, but that angered a lot of socialists and got people talking and debating, because who's having a conversation about why FDR sucked? Nobody.
Oh,
But
I
now
have
we
a
are.
friend. I have a friend who tried to have a conversation with me about it.
People were upset.
Yeah.
She was getting angry DMs from her friends.
I may have lost a friend over
I know,
this.
I
I don't know.
Yeah,
Were they a friend, honestly? But no, to your point, that's exactly what we're doing. Like, I have my "What Happened in 1971" shirt. That's one of our top selling shirts in Austin. You hit it, right? It starts a conversation. And that is exactly what we're trying to do. We're not trying to get people to vote Libertarian by seeing our shit. We're trying to get them to start a conversation, learn along the way, but also that we're trying to build something outside of the political realm. It starts, and this is the old Andrew Breitbart quote, right? Politics is downstream from culture. I firmly believe that. And we have so long neglected to take part in this cultural conversation. We get off on the talking about politics, the fixation on the isms versus trying to actually focus on what is going to move the needle. And culture by far is the thing that pushes people to actually consider things in a different way. Like Harry Potter, or I forget the name of the book 5 though, where you have Dolores Umbridge. I talk about that to folks and I'm like, you do realize the reason you hate her is because she is government entity coming into private school to tell them how to run their school. And they're like, oh my God, you're right. And I'm like, exactly. But that right there does so much more to show the value of getting government out of schooling than me sending them white papers on school choice. It's night and day. And anybody who's pretending that doesn't matter, they're not really trying to change people's minds. They're just trying to be right.
And that's the thing about this book that I really like, is that it's not just for libertarians. It's not just for Republicans. Right. It can be for everybody, honestly. So no matter, what political affiliation you have as a parent, you can read this to your kid. So that's what I like about it, is it's marketable to everybody, not just our niche.
It's not like it's the agenda isn't necessarily there, because all it really is telling, what he did and talked about why he was so cool. And, because he did become president of the United States after all, there must have been something special about him. Well, what was it that made him special, or what was it that made him unique? Well, he was silent. He was humble. He was quiet. He was not he was the boss, but he wasn't bossy. And, he rose to power, but he had an opportunity to stay in power, and he decided to go home instead. So those kinds of concepts, I feel like, are just, they're only talked about maybe in the context perhaps of George Washington, when you think about George Washington walked away from power. But were there any other presidents who kind of followed that example? Well, Coolidge was actually one of them. Most people don't know that, like, most other presidents tried to run for more than 2 terms and either failed to win a nomination, died while they were in office, or whatever, what have you. I mean, Coolidge could have run for another term. He could have been, I think, the first 3rd term president, but he didn't do it. He decided to walk away from power. I mean, from Woodrow Wilson to Teddy Roosevelt to all these other presidents, they wanted to be a president for more than 3 terms, which is why we're all glad that FDR, who sucked, got out of office, died, aka died, and then they passed the constitutional amendment to prevent that. But the thing in here, the page that probably really is the part that matters the most, is this page where he talks about he didn't do his job like most presidents by being bossy and telling people what to do. Calvin mostly just let people be free to make their own choices.
So that's where the libertarian values are in there.
Where the values are. That's laissez-faire, right? Without saying laissez-faire or beating them over the head with it. So, there's little jokes in there and things like that, and some themes. So this is universal, right? If you're a Democrat, even if you're a Stalinist, and you read this to your kids, what they're really going to get out of this is what Calvin Coolidge was like, where he was from and born, the kind of life that he led, how he became president, and why he chose to walk away.
It's good stuff, guys. You guys are doing great things. And truly, I can't thank you enough for actually helping bring real solutions to the cultural space that we so desperately need. And I just want to say, I know we're already hard pressed for time, but this is something, folks, that we need more of. We need more people in the greater liberty movement to get off of line, stop arguing, get out of your Facebook groups, and start building something better. Start building the solutions. Start being the change you wish to see, because otherwise it's just going to be more of the same. And it starts with us changing the cultural conversation. So I guess that's my final thoughts as we wrap things up. What do you guys have for us as we wrap things up on your end?
Yeah, that's right. Channel that energy into productivity. When you want to go yell at somebody, go write a book instead.
Yeah, take all of that anger and rage that you have, blowing up people's DMs, and turn that into something productive. That's what I say. If you're interested in getting a copy, you can find it on Amazon. Again, it's on Kindle. So if you've got Kindle Unlimited, you can get it. But we highly recommend the paperback. And we're also going to, if you really absolutely positively must have a signed copy, we'll have that up on our website by this evening.
We've got our markers so that we can sign the book.
Our gold, we sign it in gold. So get yourself a copy over at Amazon.com.
Perfect. Well, folks, if you enjoyed today's episode, you know the drill. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and give it a share. But number 2, more importantly, click the artwork in your podcast catcher. It'll bring you over to today's episode, where you're going to find the entire transcript from today's episode, plus all those very important aforementioned links, including the link to, yes, Calvin, the coolest president. And again, thank you, Austin and Stephanie, for doing the amazing things that you guys are doing behind the scenes. It truly... It speaks to how we're going to make a difference here in the greater liberty movement. You guys are leading by example. So, folks, if you want to go ahead and learn more, please go ahead and reach out to Austin and Stephanie, where folks can find you guys. And by the way, social media links, hit us with those.
Yeah, so I'm now Steffi P for Liberty. I used to not have that name, but now that I'm married, Steffi P for Liberty.
And I'm AP for Liberty. AP, the number 4, AP for Liberty, which you can find me everywhere on that.
Perfect. Links in the show notes. And by the way, folks, we have a video version of the show. If you're missing that, well, don't worry. Again, head over to Rumble, Odyssey, or YouTube. Just do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and a little notification bell so you don't miss a single time we go live. So with that being said, talking about changing the culture, we're going to go ahead. If you're on the YouTubes, we're going to continue the conversations about changing the culture with our good friend Connor Boyack from the Libertas Institute. That video will start right here. So I'll see you guys if you stick around for that. Otherwise, that being said, Brian Nichols signing off here on the Brian Nichols Show for Austin and Stephanie Petersen. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hey!
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.